So much talk about Ben Carson this week and his comments on guns, among other things. But how do GOP voters feel about Ben Carson? Well, I sat down with a group of Republican New Hampshire voters at St. Anselm's College's New Hampshire Institute of Politics, and they gave us an earful. Let's start by talking about the person who's probably been in the news the most this week, and that is Ben Carson. Show of hands, how many people found it offensive or at least troubling what he said this week about the Oregon school massacre? Why?
I think at the time it was probably an insensitive comment to make. I also think that you really don't know how you're going to react until you're really in that situation. So it's difficult to put yourself in the shoes of those people who are really in a crisis moment.
Did anybody else feel that he was sort of blaming the victims in that way?
I don't think so. I think who knows what's going through people's minds when such a terrible event occurs. And I think Dr. Carson spoke from his heart and felt what he said.
I don't think Mr. Carson meant any harm by what he said, but it's never wrong to do the right thing, and that would be the right thing. I mean, I can understand you'd be paralyzed in fear, I would imagine, in that situation, but I would hope that I would try to stop it.
I think what Ben Carson was trying to explain is what he would do. I don't think he was specifically speaking about the victims, as that would be insensitive. I think he was just focusing on his individual person and what he would like to do in this situation.
Certain people have a tendency to be very reactionary, and it doesn't take them long to make a decision. Being a surgeon, as he is if someone was injured, I'm sure that Dr. Carson would run to their aid. And in the same token, if he thought that he could defend a life, I believe he probably would try to intercede in that.
Let's talk about a couple of other things that he's said this week, and I want to get your reaction. Dr. Carson was asked about what he would do about Hurricane Joaquin if he were in the Oval Office. He said, quote, "I don't know." Is that okay for a presidential candidate to say? Should they have thought through scenarios and answers? I'll ask you.
I would assume probably, but if he's being put on the spot, I don't think President Obama or any official in that situation could make a decision within seconds. I think it would take time to logically think about what would work, what wouldn't work, and even what's possible. I don't think it's a decision anyone would be able to make up on the spot.
We have a president right now that jumps to a conclusion without having the facts. I don't think we need another president that jumps to the conclusions without having the facts. And I was always taught, if you don't know the answer, say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And I'm sure as president, he would find out if that was the case. So I don't think that's an inappropriate answer or a sign of weakness or ignorance, if you will. I think it'd be more ignorant, if you would, for him to come out with a comment on something he knows nothing about.
Jerry, what do you like about him? I mean, I know he's not your first choice, but what do you like about him?
I like a lot about Dr. Carson. I think he's an honest guy. He's a Christian guy. He being a Christian as well. I think he's brilliant. He's a man of values. I think he's got huge integrity, and I think he's a likable guy. My only concern about him is his toughness going up against with Congress and the lobbyists, if you will.
Meaning you don't know that he would be tough enough.
I don't know that he would be tough. He might very well be tough enough. I tell you, if he won the primary, I could certainly vote for him.
He was also asked about the debt ceiling recently, in which he struggled to answer. He said he would not sign an increased budget, which is not the same as the debt ceiling. Do you feel that he does know enough about these things and about the way Washington works and about what to do as president?
To me, it does bring up a red flag. I mean, I like Ben Carson, but I'm not a supporter of him. I like someone who has some political experience, and it does raise a red flag, but I don't think it's a big concern at this moment.
All of this, of course, follows on the heels of him saying that he doesn't feel that a Muslim could be president of the United States. He feels that Islam is not consistent with the Constitution. Constitutionalists point out there is no religion test for president. So how do you feel about some of the comments that he's made? Are you comfortable?
I think his comments were made within the context of what we're seeing in the Middle East today, where Coptic Christians are being brought to the water's edge and beheaded. If that's the type of Muslim that would run for president, no, I would not support them, and I would concur. But the Constitution does guarantee that there's no religious litmus test for who would run for and ultimately be elected president.
Our country is so concerned about women's rights. The Sharia law that is followed by some Muslims is very unfair to women, and presidents have to take a presidential oath of office to abide by the Constitution, and anyone, Muslim, Christian, anyone who would follow Sharia law, for example, would be in contrast with the Constitution.